episode 3, season 2 of the Vistara Hour. And it's going to be a special one this week. We have our first official guest of season 2, a good friend of mine that I crossed paths with on Instagram, I think, or maybe it was Twitter first, one or the other, or X or whatever it's called nowadays. And he is a chiropractor. He is studying to become an energy healer. I think he already does that a little bit as well. So we'll just bring him on board. Welcome to the Vistara Hour, Rich, Dr. Rich Minuski. It's good to have you on the show, to be very honest.
I am so honored to be here. This is such a treat. I listened to all of season 1, so this is amazing to be a part of this. You're doing great things here.
Thank you.
Well, thank
Allison,
you.
how was this week for you?
Oh, this week was, as you know, I'm going through a huge transformation in my life right now, so it's kind of humbling and sobering at the moment. And last night I just really sat back and closed my eyes and really saw the blessing in the destruction. And there's a lot of destruction going on right now, and a whole lot of rebirth happening right now. And I'm just kind of like in the midst of it. And the thing that keeps like coming to my mind is a long time ago, I read a quote by Dr. Wayne Dyer, and he said, when you squeeze an orange juice comes out. What happens when you get squeezed? What comes out of you? And so I've just been really focusing most on surrender and trust at this moment. And not only surrender and trust, but speaking my own truth. Because things cannot transform and they cannot get better, and you can't have a true rebirth without speaking your own truth from your own heart. So that's where I'm at this week.
It's interesting because last week we did start the conversation about destruction, right? Finding love within the destruction, or tuning into love within the destruction, because if there isn't a destruction, you cannot have transformation. That was really what we were talking about last week. And we've really been on this journey this summer in a way. And I think this is why we chose to focus on transformation this season, because that's one of the bigger changes that is happening this season, is that we have an umbrella for anybody that's new tuning in on episode 3. I'm sure there'll be friends and connections on Rich's end tuning into episode 3. So if you're tuning in now, what we're doing in season 2, which is very different than season 1, is that we have this umbrella theme for the whole season. And then we're finding all these topics that interlink to that theme. And that theme is transformation, because Allison and I both felt that whether it's in our own personal lives or the lives of people that are around us, there's a lot of transformation happening right now. There's a lot of destruction happening right now. And not everybody knows how to navigate those situations. And it's sometimes very difficult. Like when you're in the churn, call back to season 1. When you're in the churn, it's not always easy to navigate. If you don't have the know-how, if you don't have that level, I don't want to say that level of consciousness, but like that level of knowledge, or like that level of resources, let's say, if you don't have those resources, accessible resources, you're probably going to find it difficult some people find it difficult to navigate those situations. Heck, even I find it sometimes difficult to navigate those situations. The amount of times I've called Allison and probably reached out to Rich as well. I'm like, I'm going through it. So that's why it felt very resonant for us to, tackle this theme and tackle transformation this season. Rich, what are your thoughts on all this?
I love all these sharings already because, when I think of transformation, the first thing I think of is being uncomfortable. It's really diving into the parts of ourself unique to us Nobody else really walks the same path, even though we may have some similarities. And it's that through that uncomfortableness that we really get to become lighter, because we start to integrate parts of us that are waiting to reconnect with who we are. So, as beautiful and scary as maybe someone not starting the path yet, as it may sound from an outside perspective, there is just so much beauty and creation that comes out of it. So I love
Yeah.
the topic deeply.
I love the way you said that about integrating parts of ourselves, because that's what it really is. We have these, I always looked at it as these parts of ourselves looking to be seen, trying to force
Absolutely.
their way out to be seen. Yes.
And that's really where that struggle comes in, isn't it? Because perhaps even sometimes when there's that resistance on our end to see those parts, when we deal with that resistance, a lot of times it's very ego-based, because not all those parts are perhaps going to be sunshine and daisies and rainbows. Like, some of those parts are probably perhaps fragments of shadow self, fragments of our flaws, and things that the universe actually wants us to look at, so that we can address these things and we can sort of learn from these not necessarily great aspects of us, or perhaps mistakes or errors that we did in the past that we didn't necessarily realize there were mistakes and errors, because at the time, as Allison and I have both said on this show, it's like, at the time, given what we knew in that moment, we didn't realize that this was probably a misstep. But then later on, with growth, with expansion, with hindsight, we're able to sort of look back at it and go, ooh, okay, that probably wasn't the greatest step, even though I know that it was the best thing that I could do at the time. It wasn't necessarily the greatest step. So a lot of times I feel like there is that resistance from our ego to see all of these different fragments, or to listen to all of these different fragments, because there's always, from the ego's perspective, there's always like, I know better. And no, we don't. That's the truth. Because there's always more to learn. As Allison always says, there's always more. There's always more.
Yeah. Rich, how did you get your start? What made you interested in energy work?
I had quite an interesting path to where I am today. I went into chiropractic actually by mistake. I was in a past relationship, and I kind of changed my profession to stay in that relationship. And then I just happened to fall in love with the education that I was getting. My chiropractic career kind of brought me into pregnancy and pediatrics. So I got more of I call it a crunchy practice, where I was getting people that were doing alternative things, and I got introduced to Reiki. And then, a long story short, my Reiki journey kind of brought me into Barbara Brennan School of Healing, where I'm at currently. And my background in my undergrad was neuroscience, so the psyche and psychology and how the brain works and how we protect ourselves. The program is fundamentally based in all of that to do our energy healing. So it just everything kind of from my past just aligned to where I am, and now I'm in my second year there. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that. I love that. And I love that you kind of found your way to the divine feminine energy through your chiropractic work. That's really great. What did you learn about spirituality and energy work through chiropractic work?
Oh, so chiropractic is a great facilitator of energy work, because you can easily become a robot and be disconnected and just do the steps. But if you're present, just like being grounded and, in meditation, you really can pick up on somebody's energy. I've picked up on emotions, just internal knowings, and shutting off our analytical mind, because when we get a diagnosis, we think we know what the person needs. But if you listen to the person and you feel their body, There's a lot more information there. So it's been an interesting journey having all of these awarenesses, because I think that that's all that spirituality really is being more aware of yourself and what's going on around you. So
Yeah,
that's kind of where I'm at.
I love that. I love that spirituality is being aware, because that's what it really is. It is life and being aware of what's happening with you and around you. Yeah, I think that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, happy to.
What about, because I know, I know that you've also had a very transformative journey recently as well. And I know, I don't know how much you're willing to share or how much you're open to sharing, but I know that you've already done, if I'm not mistaken, I know you've already participated in what, 2 ayahuasca ceremonies so far?
Yes. Yes. And I had done bufo once.
Oh, I
So
don't even know
I
what
have
that
dabbled
is.
in poison tree frog
Oh,
crystals that
okay.
you, yeah. So I've been called to plant medicine in my spiritual work as well. Full transparency, my spiritual awakening started when I first started Barbara Brennan. I didn't know who I was. I really had my identities attached to my profession. My ego was all about my clientele, being busy chiropractor in Manhattan. It wasn't really about my creation or my self-expression. So once I started to look at my childhood and I was somebody that attached all of my identity to my hurt. So that if I tell everybody all of the hard things that I experienced, then they can have pity for me and they can kind of understand what I went through to get to where I am. And once I started to take a step back and really understand that although those are parts of me that are important and I chose this path for myself, they don't need to take up the space and bandwidth to be my identity. So then it started, this past year was really me finding and understanding who I am and what I'm going to do from here on, versus just being in this continual pattern of just being. And I think there is a big difference with that. And I might have lost track of what the original question was if I went off topic.
I was asking about, because I know through our conversations, I know that you've
Yes,
recently been going through that
plant medicine.
transformation.
Yes,
And then I asked
yes.
about your 2 ayahuasca ceremonies. That if you don't want to, again, if you don't want to share too much about those, it's totally fine. But I'm
I
very
am an open
curious
book.
about what drew you to them, and what that experience was. Because I know for a fact, every time that I even consider the possibility of trying one, all I feel is my body going, no, 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 no. Yeah. And so that's sort of, I'm curious about your experience.
Yes. And the first thing I would preface is saying, always listen to that inner guide. Ayahuasca, although it's an incredible resource and gift when you even have access to it, because a lot of people don't, it is not for everyone. And my path was very unique. It was a set of events and opportunities to even get to a traditional ceremony to do it. I felt guided to do it. And there was a lot of synchronicities. One of the ceremonies was called, I don't know if I'm allowed. One of the ceremonies had to do with love. So one thing about me is my favorite color is green. The heart chakra is kind of where I love to be and live. And I was drawn to it for that reason. And it has felt divinely orchestrated and by no mistake. I've had very unique experiences with people in each ceremony that I didn't know going into it. And I would just say that it calls to you when you're meant to be there, if you're ready to be there for that. And that there's other ways to continue your spiritual awakening without using plant medicine as well.
So how long ago did you do this ayahuasca ceremony?
Yeah, my first one was, I believe, in March, and that one was a little rough. I do have a quite a traumatic childhood, so the purging component of it was a bit rough. And then my last one was in August of this year, and that one was more rough. And the best way I explain it is it's kind of like it's a welcome purge, because you're truly purging things that only the person that does it would understand what you're truly releasing, and freeing more space up to be filled with new things. But it is quite a journey.
I've had a few friends that have done ayahuasca before, and I'm hearing some of the same things from them, and how transformative a ceremony like that was for them. And they've said the same thing, you know, it's not meant for everybody, but when you're called to it, you follow that calling. And it's not the easiest process to go through. It's like purging, like supersonic speed, like, oh my gosh, you're getting rid of everything all at once. And that takes a strong soul to be able to do that, to just be able to just, you know, purge, just, you know, in that amount of time, that short amount of time. But I find it just so fascinating, because some of my friends, along with the purge, they were able to see like this rebirth within themselves.
Yeah,
Really, truly transformative time.
the beautiful thing with my plant ceremony background is that I am currently doing Barbara Brennan in the meantime, and my school's program makes us, well, it's required that we see a therapist during the duration of school, because it's all about shadow and introspective work, and
Oh, that's very interesting.
processing. Oh, yeah, but this school is such a gift to the world if it's your path and it calls to you. And one thing I spoke with my it's called a BIP. It's somebody that has done Barbara Brennan and is now a therapist for the students, is that basically some of these experiences with plant medicine and other experiences in the spiritual world are exactly that. They're experiences to help our consciousness expand, to further allow us to integrate parts that were too narrow in our bandwidth to first be integrated. So by having these experiences, we're able to process more of our inner workings that we weren't previously able to. And the other thing that I just would like to mention is that psychedelics are now tied to neurogenesis. So they're showing that you're making new synapses, new connections with your brain processing, and it's allowing for new connections to form, to truly make our brains work more efficiently. So it's pretty interesting.
That is really cool. I've also heard that it can help with drug and alcohol addiction. It can also help
It's
with
amazing.
And
There's a
trauma.
there's a very interesting documentary on Netflix that Bug and I watched, and it was all about plant medicine. It's actually it was very, very interesting. Like the documentarian goes through like and discusses like mushrooms, psychedelics, like you know, MDMA, like all of these things, but like they're used in a way that is more for inner healing, for therapy. Like it's not used recreationally, it's used for, you know, like this inner journey. And you see these people sitting down with like eye masks on, and like they're just completely internal, and they are able to release and navigate through things that they probably wouldn't have been able to do if they were like, I mean, for lack of a better word, if they were sober. Like
Right.
even though they're literally like they're microdosing it and everything, there's still this like lowering of ego gates, I guess, that allows you to really just like express and feel what you need to feel. But what I was going to say earlier is that it feels like ayahuasca is like going through a purging journey in hyperspeed. Like it just feels like what would have probably taken you like months, maybe years, takes you about an hour. Like it's I don't even know. Like I think that's the part of it that terrifies me the most, is like I don't know if I can handle all of that happening, everything everywhere all at once kind of thing. Like I don't know if I have the bandwidth to I can barely handle my brain on a regular day. I don't know if I could do it like where it's so intense. I don't know if I could do that.
The thing with ayahuasca is it really breaks through the ego. And a lot of it, when we talk about spirituality, we go into surrender. And that really is what it is. It's really about letting go and trusting the process. My relationship with ayahuasca is that the plant medicine really has a divine central intelligence based off of the experience. It really shows the interconnectedness between each human being, and there's a divine unity when you experience it. So when you're ready to let go and truly surrender in that aspect, I think it calls to you in those moments. But that resistance and our minds are so programmed to keep us from doing exactly that. Like, that's what our psyche's there for. It's to protect us from things we haven't experienced. But in the same sense, you have to decipher when it's for your higher good, or if it's just keeping the pattern alive so that you're just repeating it again.
I love that. I really love that. You've said some really amazing things throughout this podcast that I've been like, oh my gosh, this is great. Oh my gosh, this is great. I have really enjoyed meeting you through this podcast.
Oh, thank you.
I would really like to know more about the shadow work that you do. And
Absolutely.
maybe so far in your journey, because I really truly believe that our journeys are never over. It's all just
Never.
so infinite, but so far in your journey, what is the most important thing? If you could say anything to anybody about shadow work, what would that be?
Wow, this is a beautiful talking point to have. So I want to just preface that I really believe that the work is lifelong and that there's always more layers to peel. I have this conversation with my husband all the time because he is always asking when I'm going to be done with this introspection, and I don't think it ever ends. It's always a releasing to be more free, to liberate your soul, to be more of itself.
Yes.
And as far as my shadow work, I think a lot of my stuff had to do with guilt, shame. The thing with our shadow and with a lot of what are the parts of us that we don't want to accept comes truly from society and our parents.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of our wounding and the defenses that we create in our adult self are from our child self that was too vulnerable to understand and process what happened to us. So for me, it was really finding the connection. And to be honest, a year ago, I was the person that would give love to everybody, but I couldn't give love to myself. So a lot of my shadow work had to really deal with falling back in love with who I actually am, and integrating that into me, because you also can't give authentic love to others, because there's a love mask too, right? We could get into masks too. And I've been on this path of trying to understand Jesus and understanding what it is to truly love people for who they are and not without with letting go of judgments. And a lot of it has to come back to the self. We judge what we don't accept in ourselves. We judge and we're bothered by things that we're not willing to look at ourselves. And it's really mind blowing when you do the awareness and you become a silent observer of who you are to try to understand this, because the shadow is just your authentic self waiting to be released and integrated. It's not bad parts of us. It is just parts of us that we believe should not be expressed because of things we were taught. And that is very different than, even sexuality alone, sexual expression. We have such a stigma with it, and it's an authentic part of being a human being, and it's important. It's tied to our creativity. It's tied to our passion, and suppressing that, you make people, depressed. You make people question their sexuality, and I think it's just so much more than that.
So would you say that working with your shadow is more like working with the unconscious parts of yourself?
Yeah. So the way I can put it for somebody that is listening is, when we're a child and something traumatic happens, what seems to happen is the event gets separated and parts of us fragment to where we have the memory and then we avoid the emotional pain that came with it. So a lot of my shadow work involves doing experiential meditations and guidings like that, so that you can go back to those points, feel those emotions in your adult self, so that you can remember and understand that what was once traumatic is not traumatic at this point in your lifetime, so that it gets reintegrated and truly becomes a part of you, versus kind of, we have also a pattern of just remembering things, but we don't kind of deal with them.
Yeah.
So you could be like, yeah, this happened to me and I could tell you about it, but you kind of have to feel it and bring it to your heart to transmute it, to truly transform it.
Yeah. And I think that just kind of ties into what you said earlier in the show, where you've learned to not use your trauma to define who you are. And that is just so transformative in and of itself. And I think it's really important for people to see that, because most of us, and what I'm seeing and what I see within myself, is that I was in a pattern of creating my life through that trauma, but I wasn't really consciously aware of what I was doing and how I was doing it. And it's just so great to hear you talking about that, and how you're releasing those old childhood traumas and those old childhood patterns to love yourself, because it all starts within us, to love us. And that everybody, when we're walking around with this trauma mindset, everybody really truly is a reflection of who we are. They really are. We're choosing our relationships from that trauma. We're choosing everything from that trauma, and we don't even realize it. And a lot of us aren't even conscious of it. And I became conscious of it, I guess, a few years back. And that was for me, that was such a hard concept for me to understand. You hear, oh, everybody's a reflection of you. You hear, you have to do the inner childhood. You hear, shadow work. And here I was on this spiritual path with that love mask that you talked about. I love that. That is so fantastic. Love mask. And I guess about a year and a half ago, I started transforming, and I allowed myself to really feel the emotions and just sit with it. And it sucks at times, but it really allowed those subconscious things to come up that I was not looking at, that I had repressed for so many years. And I was able, through that process, to accept it and to accept myself. And that's like such a big thing, when we can accept ourselves for who we are, the shadow side or the unconscious side and the light side. It starts to get a little bit easier. And, for me, some people, it's like this transformative process that happens like overnight. And they wake up the next day and they're like, yeah, I'm better. but I don't believe that. I don't believe that. For me, it is still a path that I'm walking. And it's just so beautiful to hear you speak about all of this. It's just really, really beautiful. Thank you so much. So I do have another question for you.
Oh, that's it. She's
Okay.
just, it's not going to stop now, Rich. You've opened Pandora's box by being on this show, buddy. Like,
I love it. I'm enjoying it.
When you speak of surrender, what exactly does that mean to you?
Yeah. Surrender, I think, is, I almost want to say multidimensional, which sounds, I don't know. It came to mind.
I just got the angel bumps, dude. Ooh.
You know, surrender has different levels to it because we can tell ourselves that we surrender in many situations. And I think there's a difference from saying something and feeling it in our being, in our energy field. You know, we all have our unique fields that we're surrounding ourselves with. And it's just like with gratitude, you know, you could say, I'm grateful for my life, but until you feel it, does it change the frequency in your field? So for surrender, for me, it's a little bit deeper. It's about facing that uncomfortableness, that fear. I think there's an underlying fear with surrender that needs to be stepped over. And then you kind of just, I don't know, free fall, dive into it. And then that's kind of where the sweet spot is, in my experience. And it comes and goes. You know, we are human. And that, I think that's the biggest thing. People, when they hear spiritual beings talking about their own individual past, sometimes get turned off from hearing about woundings and hearing about people's journeys, because sometimes you don't want to hear that everybody has their individual woundings and need to do introspective work. And sometimes people don't want to hear that they have to look into their fear, because their fear keeps them in the box that they're comfortable in. So it's, you know, this is human nature. This is not ever, and everybody does their spiritual awakening when they're ready to do it. We can't force it. So just loving people through it, I think, is the best way to go about it.
Yeah. And I might, when you say loving people through it, I would like to add a word to that, loving and accepting people through it. Yeah, because that word acceptance is, love means so many different things to so many people. And has that word for you transformed over the past few years? Like what love meant to you before you started all of this work versus what it means now?
Oh yeah. My understanding of love is beyond the comprehension of whatever I thought it would be. I truly find it to be the most powerful gift that human beings possess. It not only for ourselves, but it is the uniter. It is the change from separation to unity. It's how we heal people. It's how we get healed from the divine source, or whatever you want to call it in whatever spiritual practice that you have. It's the conductor. The heart chakra really is the pump. So I never had that awareness before that. And I think, like you were saying, my perception of what love is was convoluted to meet my previous experiences. So it would be how I was shown love in my childhood, or it was how I felt I had to give love to receive love. But it definitely has changed as time progressed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's this path is just so amazing. It really is amazing. And I think that it's a big part. The shadow work that you do is essential for liberation. It really
it's necessary.
Yeah. And what does, because you mentioned liberation, what does liberation mean to you?
Liberation is, to me, is a soul or individual truly understanding what they're here to do. Because I think we all, and this is an important thing to highlight on here as well, is we all have amazing gifts to give to ourselves and others. We're all uniquely different. And when you start to believe that and truly understand that you're here for a reason, even if it's been a lifetime of not seeing that for yourself, it's never too late. And I think that that is where that comes into play. When you're becoming your own creator and you're just expressing your essence in any way that is authentic to you, that's where I would say that comes in.
I love that. I really love that. I love everything that you're saying. Thank you. And
See
I've
why
kind
I
of
wanted
taken
him
up
on the
so much
show.
time. Do you have anything to say, Alan? I think I'm just like saying so much right now.
No, to be very honest, like I'm just so taken by this conversation. Like I love everything that is being asked. I love everything that's being shared. And I feel like the universe is teaching me a beautiful lesson in listening, which can be a little difficult for me to do sometimes. But I think just going off of what Rich was saying just now, which is about how everybody has a gift. I think what I would add on to that is a gift doesn't have to be something that is like energy healing or anything along those lines. It doesn't have to be that. And I think that's very important for people to hear, is that a gift isn't necessarily something that is supernatural. A gift could be the fact that you are someone who is patient. Patience could be a gift. The fact that you are able to sit and hold space for someone, that's a gift. The way you love someone else, that is a gift. The way you, if you're a painter or an artist or a singer or a musician, that is a gift, because everything that we do, and I think this is something that I'm really learning and tapping into recently, I've been learning and tapping into it recently, is that we have the capability, we have the choice every single day. And I think it also goes off of the quote that Allison shared with me, not quote, but it was like a question answer type thing with a guru that, is she a guru? I don't even know if that is a label that we could.
Well, yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
I think so. She's a teacher. Yeah. So we both follow this beautiful soul. I swear she is someone that I could just listen to all day. Her name is Asha Nayaswamy. She's a disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda's disciple. So it's like a
Kriyananda.
Yeah. And there was something that she said in her recent answer to someone's question is essentially, which is take care of the minute and your potential will essentially take care of everything else. Like your focus should be legitimately on the minute itself. Where is it? There it is. Take care of the minutes and your potential will take care of itself. Take care of the minutes. And that's something that sort of like solidified everything else that I've been feeling this week, which is we have an opportunity every single day to take anything that is mundane, that we think is mundane. It could be doing the dishes. It could be doing laundry. It could be walking your dog. It could be having a conversation with a loved one. Any of those things that we, to a certain degree, take for granted, or to a certain degree, we just, like we don't necessarily give the attention that we should to them. Every single one of those things could become a spiritual act. Every one of those things could be us practicing our spirituality, us being in the moment. And it's really that simple. And I think knowing that and practicing that will allow you to tap into what it is that you are gifted with, and what your gifts are, how you can be of service to other people. And being of service to other people, again, doesn't necessarily mean that, you go and give a yoga class, or you do chiropractic work, or you do angel card readings or crystal healings. It doesn't have to be that. Being of service is literally you just showing up for someone else. That is you being of service. Showing up to yourself, that is you being of service. And having that ability to really give all of yourself to these, what we would call mundane moments, it really enriches your life. It really gives your life this, like, a deeper meaning, I find. Like, I don't know, I feel like I'm going on a tangent, but it really, the idea of, we're all gifted. I think my original point was that gifts don't necessarily have to be supernatural. They can be legitimately part of your very being, like a kindness that you show someone else. That is, that is you being a gift in and of it, in and of itself. It's you being a gift to the world. And you can only do that, to sort of like underline what you were saying, you can only do that if you've, like Allison and I have shared in the past, is if you, step number one, accepted and love yourself. That is the way that you can tap into those things. What is the infamous thing that RuPaul says? What is it? Something about
how you gonna love yourself?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Speaking?
Like, how are you going to love anybody else if you can't even love yourself? Something along those lines. I totally butchered it. I'm sorry, RuPaul, but it's fine. Don't come after me.
It's fine. It's probably trademarked or something anyway.
Yeah.
I would love to touch on one point just on that topic. And I think that anybody that is not sure of their gifts, which is very common in a lot of people, I would like to circle it back to taking care of oneself, because it's something that we don't truly value as a global consciousness. And I just want to bring some awareness to that. Proper hydration, proper nutrition, eating your fruits and vegetables, taking time to meditate, and just being with yourself, removing yourself from all of the energy around you. These are things that really help you find those answers for yourself. And in breath work, I think, is, oxygenating your brain. Our brain is there to receive oxygen, and it processes better when we give it that. And if you look at anxiety and how it affects the body, it shuts off our breathing. We hold our breath. So there's so many intricate ways of being that we overlook. And I just wanted to presence that, just because the more you take responsibility for yourself and truly go on this path of trying to do something for yourself, you'll find those answers. And there's no time that's too late.
That's just so important. I work just as you do. I work with people every single day, and it's the lecture every single day. What are you doing to take care of yourself? And self-care can go on so many different layers and so many different levels. And maybe it starts with, hey, let me, walk down the street and get 5 minutes alone, without kids screaming or whatever,
right?
And but what more can we do for ourselves? Because this path of awareness really does start with us, and it starts with us caring for us. It really does. Everything comes back to us 100%.
Absolutely.
And I love that what you were talking about. I'm going to go back to the shadow work, because I just really feel like we need to take the stigma away from shadow work. People are often afraid. They hear shadow and they hear what they hear is darkness and despair and evil, and that's that can't be a part of me. That's not inside of me. That's not who I am, so I can't look at it. And there's these sects of spirituality, that when I got into metaphysics, years ago, the first thing that I learned after growing up Catholic was there's no devil, there's no Satan, there's no negativity, so focus on the positivity. And I really feel like that's hurting people.
Mm-hmm.
And really, really hurting people, and it's teaching people to bypass. And so people start living in this world like somewhere up here and only positivity and only rainbows and unicorns. And that's not life. We're not here to just focus on the positivity. We're here to grow. And getting into the shadow work, you know, for me, did take some courage, but it also brought me to a new level of awareness for me.
I would love to add one thing when you're done too on this.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think you're really bringing awareness to something that is the thing with all of this work is this is the reality that we knew has to change, right? We're talking about everything from religion to what our parents told us was right and wrong. It all changes when you are starting to do the introspective work because it's not truly real. And the thing with shadow work is, and the pretty fascinating thing is, as parents teaching their children, we often are generationally passing off the same things that have not been resolved in us.
Yes.
So, you know, when we're looking at our own shadow work and the resistance we have, we're also you'll be able to see parts of your parents that they couldn't, you know, look at and bring that awareness to themselves. And it's so complex when you're going down this path. But just to know that insecurity and that fear and resistance is a normal part of this process, and that your parents may not even understand it when you first start to do it, but you also give the ability to, if your parents are still alive and you have that ability to, you can go back and be like, it's okay to be this.
Yeah.
It's okay that this happens to you. It's okay that this happened to you and you passed it to me, because I now have the awareness that my experience was my experience, but what my parents' experience was their experience. And to make them be perfect human beings, which do not exist, it just truly, you're creating scenarios and limits in the mind that are just not accurate, are not real. Nobody is perfect. Everybody is wounded to a degree, and everybody's doing the best that they can in that moment. And once you can let go of that need for perfectionism in yourself and others, there's more liberation to be made there too.
That's so incredibly beautiful, and the compassion that comes through you. I've had that experience as well, learning that my parents passed on the tools that they had, and they passed on the tools that they had to me because that's what was passed to them, which was passed to them, which was passed to them. So in doing this work, we're essentially clearing out generations of trauma. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful work. Yeah. It really is. It's beautiful, really beautiful work. And the humbling and the sobering thing about my journey is that I passed some of those tools on to my kids too before I became aware. And I really had to look at myself and even just accept myself for that, because we did it with the best intentions.
Exactly.
Really did. And I had to look at myself and forgive myself for that. And you know, it's a journey and it's a process.
It's interesting.
Really is.
It's interesting as you were saying that, and then you said the word forgive. The only thing that came through to me in that moment is forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do.
Yeah.
And I think it adds such an interesting layer when you take it out of that specific moment and sort of apply it to life in general. It's not the forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do, because they are, you know, crucifying you specifically. It's that forgive them and understand them, because they literally did not know what they were doing at the time. They are not conscious of it. And one of the greatest, I think one of the most beautiful moments that I had when I was still in therapy, I had a session with my therapist, I wouldn't necessarily say it was complete hypnosis, but it dealt with that aspect to some degree. I would sort of link it more to what Rich was saying earlier about like guided meditations. I felt like it was more that than it was necessarily hypnosis. But I was taken back to certain moments, and I dealt with and navigated through very difficult things that I had with, you know, very difficult emotions that I had towards my parents. And one of the greatest things that my therapist did at the time was she kept saying, whatever you need to say in this moment, you are safe, say it. Nothing is going to happen if you say it, but you need to release whatever it is that you need to release. And I said some very ugly, hurtful things. But that's because that's what I was feeling at the time, you know. And after that session, I came home that day, and I remember this so vividly. I came home that day and found both of my parents in the most adorable, like, pose, asleep on each other on the couch. And I think for the first time in my life, and this was like a couple of years, like maybe five years ago, something like that, maybe 5-6 years ago. For the first time in my life, I looked at them as people and not my parents, but as people, as human beings, as beautifully imperfect human beings. And I remember smiling, and deep within, I felt like the statement of, I see you and I accept you and I understand you. And I think ever since that moment, my relationship with my parents completely shifted and changed. And that moment actually was a precursor to my eventual final coming out after 5 or 6 or 7 bajillion times, because Middle Eastern families, woohoo. But it was that moment. Since lost it now. It was that moment that sort of allowed this final coming out to be very different than every other time I tried to do it in the past. Because every time I tried to do it in the past, it was so much emotion. I was crying. I was in tears. It was like so much trauma and drama. And it was like too much. When I did it this last time, it was like, hey, Mom, this is me. Hiya. You know, it was so matter of fact. It was so, this is it. And my door will always be open if you want to be a part of my life. But if you don't, I also accept that, because that's who you are, and that's okay. And I will forever love you. And thankfully she went through the door, and so did my dad. So, you know, happily ever after on that end. But it came from a point of looking at a person, looking at another being and saying, I see you and I accept you. But you're only able to do that. And this is, again, we're going back to that same point. You're only able to do that. I was only able to do that when I allowed myself to experience and explore aspects of myself that were perhaps hateful, angry, sad, heartbroken. And those are aspects of myself that I constantly try to push away. Even yesterday, or no, yesterday, was it earlier today? I think it was earlier today. Driving back home from Beirut, I was in a crap mood. as I sometimes am on Thursdays before the show. I experience a lot of things before the show, and it's always I come to the show and all is well. But we were driving home and I was being very nihilistic, very pessimistic. I was just being very like, literally, I was like, I hate people. Like, I hate people. I don't want to deal with people. I don't want to, whatever. And as my conversation with Bug, moved forward, he was basically saying, it's okay for you to feel these things. And I was saying, no, it's not okay for me to feel these things because that's not me. That's not who I'm supposed to be. That's not who I am. I'm not this pessimistic person. I'm not this person who hates everyone. I don't want to feel it. And I feel like this was me trying to regain control of nope, you're not supposed to feel these things because these things make you an awful person. And that's not necessarily the truth. It's not the truth. It's these feelings make you a person, period. Because you're allowed to feel very frustrated with humanity every once in a while. It doesn't mean that you want to actually, burn them all. It just means that in this moment, you're feeling very much like, you know what, I'm feeling very negative and I don't, I want to cocoon. Maybe that's what I needed to do. I needed to cocoon. And that's why when we came home later today, I didn't end up doing like any work. I was just editing previous episodes of season 2. I was sort of taking care of me and making and doing things that I knew meant nurturing and mothering myself and allowing myself to still feel very like blech people until it sort of dissipated. That was another tangent. They're coming in bursts, if you notice, because it's like the most of the show I'm doing a lot of listening. And then my Leo moon is like, you gotta talk. And so that's
I thought there were some valuable points in that. And the other thing that I would love to say is, a big part of my schooling and teaching is to be a silent observer and to not judge our emotions. So when you're having that anger or you're feeling disconnected and you're out of sorts, just recognizing it and, bringing your consciousness to it and being like, okay, maybe I need to breathe, or maybe I need to just be by myself and get through this moment. But to also not to, listen to our super ego and judge ourselves for it and be like, oh, I'm bad because I feel this way. Well, no, everybody feels this way in certain moments, but I'm going to now take this resource and I'm going to take the time to get out of this mindset because it's not authentic to your higher purpose. So I think that that's a great thing to bring value to. And it's also nice to hear those human parts of us when we're talking about spirituality, because that's what people are going to relate to. That's what the world is operating at on a normal basis.
Yes.
And, you have to show both sides of it to get anywhere. And the more relatable, the better. And I would love to touch on mirroring at some point in this talk, because I think that will be beneficial to people as well.
If we don't get a chance to touch on mirroring in this episode, we can definitely, and I would be more than happy to have a Rich Minuski Redux, like part 2.
Of course.
I would love to have you back on because I feel like there's so much that we can dig deeper into. You can become one of those like regular guest stars on a TV show that comes back every once in a while. Like every once in a while, there's an episode with
I
Rich.
would love it.
I think people will be asking for him to come back.
I have a feeling too. I'm almost nervous after this episode where it's like I've been voted off the island. It's just
no, not at all.
No, I know. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah, this has been such, I don't even know what time it is. I just got like lost in all the conversation and I just have found it so fascinating and so enlightening and so beautiful, absolutely beautiful and necessary.
100%.
Very necessary. Yeah. I keep going back to one of our first episodes. I think it was our first real episode where I read the story about the churning of the Milky Ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to go through that big, long 10-minute story again, because that was freaking long. But we keep making reference to the churn. And I think it's important to say that our being in a human body, we're churning all the time. And sometimes that churn, the water gets a little rougher. And what had happened with that churn was the angels and the divine souls were always living in light, constantly living in light. They were getting bored. They didn't know what they had. And the asuras, the rakshasas, the demons, they were looking at the angels and the divine souls, and they wanted what they had. So they were trying to get what they had. So the churning began. And through that churn, the gifts were born, like Lakshmi was born, Kamadinu was born, and that's the cow that gave many, many gifts. And when I looked at the story and brought it within myself, because these stories aren't always stories to look out there, and it's something that happened out there, and it's something that happened centuries ago. It's happening all the time within us, all the time within us. And when I go back to the conversation about the shadow work, all I could think about was that aspect of me that is looking at my higher self and wants to be enlightened, wants to come up, wants to be aware, that lower part of me, that shadow aspect of me, when it starts to come up and that ocean starts to churn, it's that part of me that is begging for awareness. And that higher self, that lower self is coming up and trying to merge with that higher self. And that higher self is like, oh, wow, there's still work to do. There is still work to do. And so I just, every time we talk about shadow work, I just go back to that story of the churning of the Milky Ocean, because we're churning all the time, every single day. And there are gifts to come out of that churn if we surrender and trust that churn.
Absolutely.
So
And on that note, on that beautiful note, we are going to end today's episode and sort of allow what was shared in today's episode to settle in with everybody that was listening, because I'm certain that there was so much that people could dig into.
there's so much.
I feel like this is one of
wait to listen to this again.
This is what I was going to
I'm
say.
sure.
It's like, I feel like this is going to be one of those episodes that people come back to time and time again to dig
Sure.
deeper and deeper and deeper and hear things that they may not have heard the first time because it wasn't the right time for them to hear it. And I'm so beyond grateful that we were able to hold this space through this episode, and so grateful to you, Rich, for taking the time. And grateful to your patients who understood that you needed to take the time. And so if you want to follow us on social media, you can follow us on our Instagram page now at the Vistara Hour. You can also check out our website, thevistarahour.com, where you can basically get linked to any of the podcast platforms that you listen to, because they're all listed there on the website. You can also listen on the website and comment on the episode. That's also a new feature that we've added. And if you want to follow Rich, if you want to share your social media, you're more than welcome to do that.
Sure. My Instagram is Rich Minuski, Minuski, and my Twitter is R Minuski.
Cool. And then also, I did forget to mention this in the beginning, but Rich is also, I believe you're the founder of Hug. Do you want to just like share real quick what that is? Because I think it's very important that we share that.
Yes, thank you for that. So yes, I'm the founder and the COO of a nonprofit HIV PrEP clinic. We are established in Florida and New Jersey, but we serve in 25 states virtually. Our organization is completely free, and with your PrEP or HIV care, we provide free primary care, nutrition, chiropractic care, and we're just here to provide a healthcare alternative that doesn't take from the people in need and is there to provide if you need it.
Cool.
That is really beautiful. That's really beautiful. Thank you
I
for
love
sharing
what I
that.
do. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And it's the Healthcare Unity Group. Our socials are Hug Cares, um, and you can find them on any social media platform.
Cool.
Hug, like HUG, Hug
Yeah.
Cares.
Yeah.
Yep, Healthcare Unity Group. So we do hug.
That's so wonderful.
Yes, indeed. So
This,
yeah, so you can follow those on social media. You can also, I'm sure there's like donations if you feel called to it for Hug. I'm sure all the information will be there. And so I want to thank all of you, our listeners, for tuning in to another episode. And as our beautiful new way to close off our episodes in season 2, Allison, the floor is yours.
may all beings everywhere be happy and free. May the thoughts, words, and actions of our lives contribute to the happiness and freedom for all.
Blessings to you, everyone. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Om LOKAH SAMASTAH SUKHINO BHAVANTU. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.